What if I told you that the man who promised to love and protect you was secretly planning your murder for insurance money? That while you carried his child, he was poisoning you with hospital-grade drugs, hoping you'd die in childbirth so he could collect $2.3 million and run away with his mistress? Today, I'm sharing the most horrifying betrayal story you'll ever hear. One that nearly cost me and my unborn daughter our lives, but ultimately revealed the strength I never knew I possessed. If you've ever trusted someone completely only to discover they were your worst enemy, this story will show you that even in your darkest moment, you have more power than you realize. Stay with me, because this journey from victim to victor will change how you see survival forever. My hands trembled as I cradled my 8-month pregnant belly, walking through the sterile corridors of Cedar Valley Medical Center with Ryan's favorite sandwich, turkey and Swiss on sourdough with that expensive German mustard he obsessed over. The September morning had brought the scent of rain through our bedroom windows in our Westfield suburban home, and Ryan had kissed my forehead before leaving for his cardiology shift, whispering those words that still echoed in my mind: "Take care of our little miracle, Madison." The white picket fence neighborhood where we'd bought our dream house seemed like something out of a Norman Rockwell painting, complete with tree-lined streets and neighbors who waved from their perfectly manicured lawns. This was supposed to be our fairy tale beginning, the life we'd planned during countless late-night conversations about raising children in the suburbs, weekend barbecues, and growing old together on our wraparound porch. 3 years of trying. For a baby had tested every fiber of our marriage through countless disappointments and 2 soul-crushing miscarriages that left me questioning whether my body was broken beyond repair. The specialists, the treatments, the monthly cycles of hope and devastating failure had worn us both down to emotional shadows of ourselves. When those 2 pink lines finally appeared on the pregnancy test, Ryan had actually cried, real tears, streaming down his face as he held me in our sunlit kitchen, both of us afraid to believe it was real. "Dr. Madison Clark," I'd whispered to myself afterward, practicing the sound of my married name with my future doctorate in psychology, just 6 months away from defending my dissertation. The future stretched before us like a golden road. The house we'd already bought, the nursery we'd painted pale yellow because we wanted to be surprised, the life we'd build together as a family of 3. Walking through the hospital corridors, that afternoon, I felt that familiar surge of pride seeing Ryan's nameplate gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Dr. Ryan Mitchell, cardiology. We'd met during my undergraduate years when I was volunteering at this same hospital, drawn to his confidence and those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to my soul. He was already a resident then, charming and brilliant, with hands that could restart a heart and a smile that could light up any room. "You're going to change the world, Madison," he'd told me on our 3rd date, brushing a strand of hair from my face with those gentle surgeon's fingers. "And I want to be right there beside you when you do." Those words had sealed my fate, convincing me that Ryan Mitchell was the man I'd spend my life loving and trusting completely. The afternoon shift at Cedar Valley was in full swing as I navigated the familiar hallways, nurses bustling between rooms while monitors beeped their steady rhythm of life and hope. My swollen ankles protested with each step, but the thermal bag in my hands felt like a small gesture of love, a way to show Ryan how much I appreciated his dedication to saving lives. His office was at the end of the cardiology wing, and I could already imagine his face lighting up when he saw his favorite sandwich, the way he'd pull me close despite my growing belly and kiss me like we were still newlyweds. These small moments of connection had become even more precious during my pregnancy, when exhaustion and hormones made everything feel overwhelming and fragile. I knocked softly on his office door, expecting to hear his warm voice call out, "Come," in the way he always did, followed by that brilliant smile that had first captured my heart 7 years ago. Instead, there was only silence, then a strange shuffling sound that made my stomach clench with inexplicable anxiety. Maybe he was with a patient, I reasoned, checking my watch to see 2:15 p.m. a time his schedule showed should be free for our planned lunch together. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly as I stood there, torn between knocking again and simply letting myself in like I'd done hundreds of times before. Something felt different, though I couldn't name what it was, an electric tension in the air that made the hair on my arms stand up. When I finally turned the handle and stepped, inside, the thermal bag slipped from my nerveless fingers and hit the floor with a sound that seemed to echo through my soul. Ryan was there, pressed against his desk with his white coat hanging open, his surgical hands tangled in the auburn hair of a woman whose face I recognized with crystalline clarity. Jessica Sterling, the new nursing supervisor who'd started 6 months ago, the woman who always found reasons to stop by our table during lunch in the hospital. Time suspended itself in that horrific moment as I watched my husband's hands, the same hands that had caressed my pregnant belly that very morning, promising love and protection, explore another woman's body with passionate expertise that made my knees buckle. Jessica's manicured fingers worked at his belt buckle with urgent familiarity while her supervisor badge caught the afternoon light, a twisted reminder that this woman held authority over the very nurses who'd been caring for me during my pregnancy visits. The medical charts scattered beneath them included patient files, sacred documents of human suffering and healing being desecrated by their selfish lust. I watched Ryan's face, contorted with pleasure as he kissed her throat, and realized I was looking at a stranger wearing my husband's features. A sound escaped my throat, part gasp, part sob, raw and broken like something torn from deep inside my chest. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers caught by parents, Ryan's face cycling through a spectrum of emotions: shock, guilt, panic, and finally a cold calculation that chilled me to the bone. Jessica smoothed her rumpled uniform with deliberate slowness, but her lipstick was smeared across her mouth like war paint, her hair disheveled in a way that spoke of passionate entanglement, her eyes bright with a malicious satisfaction that made my blood run cold. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, filled only by the distant sounds of the hospital continuing its daily rhythm of life and death, completely oblivious to the destruction happening in this small office. "Madison," Ryan started, his voice cracking like an adolescent's, the same voice that had whispered sweet promises in our marriage bed, that had read bedtime stories to my belly every night, that had sworn before God and our families to love and cherish me until death do us part. "Don't." The word came out as a whisper, barely audible, but carrying the weight of 7 years of trust being incinerated in 30 seconds. I tried to take a step backward, but my legs felt like liquid mercury, unable to support the weight of this devastating revelation. The thermal bag lay forgotten on the floor, our turkey sandwich spilling out like a pathetic symbol of the normal life I'd thought we were living just minutes before. Jessica laughed, actually laughed, as she hopped off the desk and straightened her supervisor's skirt with theatrical precision. "Well, this is awkward." Her voice was light and amused, as if she'd been caught eating cookies before dinner instead of systematically destroying my marriage and family. The casual cruelty of her tone, the complete absence of shame or remorse, hit me like a physical blow that left me gasping for air. Ryan shot her a warning look, but she ignored him completely, her predatory gaze fixed on me with the intensity of a hunter who'd finally cornered her prey after months of patient stalking. "You know, Madison, I've been waiting for this moment," Jessica continued, moving closer to Ryan with possessive confidence, her hand trailing across his chest like she owned him. "It's been absolutely exhausting pretending to be nice to you at hospital functions, smiling when you talk about your precious pregnancy, acting like I care about your little domestic fantasies." Each word was carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage, delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel cutting through healthy tissue. "Stop telling your wife the truth about how you haven't loved her in years? About how you only stayed because you felt sorry for her after those pathetic miscarriages?" The words sliced through me like surgical instruments, each one finding its mark with devastating accuracy. "That's not true," I managed to say, but my voice sounded foreign to my own ears, hollow and desperate as I searched Ryan's face for some sign that Jessica was lying, that this was all some horrible nightmare I'd wake up from any moment. But Ryan's silence filled the room like poison gas, choking off any hope I might have clung to. His eyes avoided mine as Jessica pressed closer to him, claiming him with her body language while I stood there 8 months pregnant with his child, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my entire life. "Oh, honey," Jessica continued, her tone dripping with false sympathy that made my skin crawl like insects were marching across it. "Did you really think a man like Ryan would be satisfied with someone like you forever? Look at yourself, swollen, waddling around like a farm animal. When's the last time you even saw your own feet?" Her laughter was sharp as breaking glass, echoing off the office walls while medical equipment hummed obliviously in the background. The fluorescent light seemed harsh and unforgiving as she circled me like a predator. Her expensive perfume, the same scent I'd been smelling on Ryan's clothes for months but had dismissed as hospital odors, now overwhelming and nauseating. In the small space, "Ryan," I said, my voice breaking as I turned to the man I trusted with my heart, my body, my future. "Tell her to stop. Tell her she's lying about everything." But when he looked at me, what I saw in his eyes was somehow worse than hatred. It was pity, the kind of condescending sympathy you might show a stray dog that didn't understand it was unwanted. "Madison, we need to talk," he said quietly, his surgical precision evident even in this moment of emotional devastation. "But not here, not like this." The clinical detachment in his voice, as if he were discussing a patient's prognosis rather than the end of our marriage, made me realize that the man I'd fallen in love with might never have existed at all. Jessica's smile widened like a shark, scenting blood in the water as she sensed my growing desperation and confusion. "Not like what, Ryan? Not like finding your husband with his tongue down another woman's throat in his office? Not like discovering that your fairy tale marriage is built on lies while you're 8 months pregnant with his child?" My hands instinctively moved to protect my belly, this innocent life caught in the crossfire of adult betrayal and cruelty. The baby kicked as if sensing the tension, and I felt a fierce protective rage beginning to build beneath the shock and heartbreak. "Our child," Ryan corrected quietly. But even that small claim of paternity felt hollow, coming from a man who'd been systematically planning to destroy us both. Jessica's laugh was like fingernails on a chalkboard as she took another step toward me, invading my personal space with predatory confidence. "Is it though, Ryan? Didn't you tell me about those psychology conferences she attended during her fertile windows? All those business trips where she was gone for days at a time?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. The suggestion that my professional commitments somehow indicated infidelity, when the truth was, I'd been building a career to support our growing family. "How dare you?" I whispered, my hands forming protective shields over my belly as the baby moved restlessly inside me, perhaps sensing the danger we both faced. "How dare either of you question my fidelity when you've been carrying on this affair right under my nose for months?" But Jessica just smiled wider, feeding off my pain like a vampire drinking blood, her eyes glittering with malicious delight as she prepared to deliver what she clearly considered the killing blow to my spirit and sanity. "Oh, please," Jessica interrupted, taking another step toward me until I could smell her breath, see the cruel satisfaction in her eyes. "The grieving wife act is getting old, Madison. Ryan and I have been together for 8 months. 8 months, honey. Do the math." The timeline hit me like a freight train. 8 months was exactly how— "In fact," Jessica continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, meant only for me, designed to inflict maximum psychological damage while appearing innocent to any observer. "He was with me the night you went into false labor last month. Remember how he said he was stuck in surgery? He was stuck, all right, stuck between my legs while you were crying alone in our bed, worried about losing the baby." The words were chosen with surgical precision, each one designed to destroy another piece of my faith in the man I'd married and the life I'd thought we were building together. "Stop," I said, raising my hand in a gesture that felt powerless against the torrent of cruelty pouring from this woman's mouth. "Just stop talking." But Jessica was clearly just getting started, her face transformed by malice into something ugly and predatory that made me understand for the first time that some people genuinely enjoy causing pain to others. "You want to know what he really says about you, Madison? How he complains about your neediness, your constant crying over every little pregnancy symptom. How he wishes he'd never married such a weak, pathetic woman who can't even carry a baby to term without drama." "Jessica, enough," Ryan said, but his voice lacked conviction, and he still hadn't moved toward me or made any gesture of protection or support. He stood there like a spectator at his own life, watching his pregnant wife being emotionally eviscerated by his mistress without lifting a finger to defend the woman who'd trusted him with everything. The realization that he was enjoying this spectacle, that he wanted Jessica to say the things he didn't have the courage to say himself, hit me harder than any physical blow could have. "No, Ryan, she deserves to know the truth." Jessica's voice rose, becoming shrill with excitement as she sensed victory within her grasp. "She deserves to know that you've been planning to leave her after the baby comes, that we've already looked at apartments together in the city, that you've been lying to her face every single day while she waddles around playing happy housewife in your suburban prison." The room began to spin as the full scope of their deception became clear. This wasn't just an affair. It was a complete dismantling of my entire existence, planned and executed with cold-blooded precision. I reached for the doorframe to steady myself, but Jessica was suddenly there, blocking my path with her body like a prison guard, preventing an escape. "Where are you going, Madison? Running away? That's what you do, isn't it? Run away from difficult conversations instead of facing reality like an adult." No wonder Ryan needed a real woman who could handle life's challenges. Her proximity was threatening, aggressive, and I could see in her eyes that she was prepared to escalate this confrontation beyond mere words if necessary. "Move," I said, my voice barely controlled as adrenaline began flooding my system, preparing my body for fight or flight. The baby kicked violently, as if sensing the danger we both faced, and I placed both hands protectively over my belly while trying to calculate how to get past this woman who clearly had no intention of letting me leave with my dignity intact. "Make me," Jessica said, the words hanging in the air like a physical challenge, her stance aggressive and confrontational as she blocked the only exit from this nightmare. I looked past her to Ryan, silently begging him to intervene, to show some remnant of the man who'd once promised to love and protect me, to demonstrate that somewhere beneath this stranger's face was the husband who'd held my hand through 2 miscarriages and sworn we'd face anything together. But he just stood there with his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his eyes fixed on the Jessica's smile widened into something genuinely frightening as she sensed my growing desperation and decided to press her advantage with the cruelty of someone who genuinely enjoyed inflicting pain. "Or what? You'll call your precious uncle." "Richard, run crying to the director about how mean the other kids are being to you?" My blood turned to ice as I realized she knew about my family connection to the hospital director, information that could only have come from Ryan during their intimate conversations. Uncle Richard had gotten me the volunteer position that led to meeting Ryan, had walked me down the aisle when my father couldn't be there, but I'd never used his position for special treatment or even mentioned our relationship to most people. "That's right," Jessica continued, seeing the shock and recognition on my face, feeding off my obvious distress like a parasite drawing nourishment from its host. "We know all about your little family connections. It's amazing what pillow talk can reveal, isn't it, Ryan? How your sweet, innocent wife has been coasting through life on nepotism and family favors while pretending to be some kind of independent woman. The casual way she discussed my private family relationships, information shared in what I'd thought were intimate moments with my husband, felt like another layer of violation being added to an already unbearable situation." Ryan finally spoke, up, but only to say, "Jessica, you're going too far." His voice weak and ineffectual, more concerned with protecting himself from potential consequences than defending his wife and unborn child from psychological assault. "Am I?" Jessica whirled around to face him, her hair whipping dramatically as she turned, her supervisor badge catching the fluorescent light like a badge of authority she was using to justify her cruelty. Am I going too far, or am I finally being honest? This woman has been living in a fantasy for 2 years, Ryan. Someone needs to wake her up to reality. She turned back to me with renewed viciousness, her face inches from mine, her breath hot against my skin as she delivered what she clearly intended to be the final blow to my spirit and sanity. Your husband doesn't love you, Madison. Your marriage is over. And frankly, looking at you now, fat, pathetic, clinging to a man who can't stand the sight of you, I can't blame him for wanting something better than whatever this is. Her gesture encompassed my pregnant form with obvious disgust, as if my condition was somehow personally offensive to her rather than the natural result of carrying Ryan's child. That's when I made the mistake that would change everything. I tried to push past her, using my body weight to move her aside so I could escape this nightmare and process what was happening in private. But Jessica's hand shot out like a striking snake, shoving me backward with surprising force that sent me stumbling. My pregnant body, already off balance from carrying 8 months of extra weight, couldn't compensate for the sudden push. I reached desperately for anything to steady myself, the desk, the chair, even the wall. But there was nothing but air and the terrible realization that I was falling. I hit the ground hard, landing on my side with my hands instinctively protecting. My belly as pain shot through my hip and shoulder like lightning bolts. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional agony of what happened next, the moment that would haunt my nightmares for months to come. Jessica stood over me with her face twisted by rage and malicious satisfaction, her supervisor's uniform wrinkled, but her eyes bright with the pleasure of having physically dominated a pregnant woman. "Stay down," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Stay down where you belong, you pathetic excuse for a woman." And then, in a moment of pure evil that seemed to slow time itself, Jessica drew back her foot and kicked me directly in my pregnant belly with enough force to make me scream. The pain was indescribable, not just physical, though that was excruciating enough to make me see stars, but emotional and spiritual, a violation so complete and shocking that it seemed to tear something fundamental inside my soul. I curled around my unborn daughter. "Stop!" The voice that cut through the air like a sword wasn't Ryan's. He remained frozen against the wall like a coward watching his wife being assaulted, but belonged to someone with real authority and moral courage. Uncle Richard stood in the doorway with his face transformed by absolute fury, his usually gentle demeanor replaced by the righteous anger of a man witnessing unthinkable cruelty. Behind him were 2 nurses who had clearly heard the commotion and come running, their faces showing shock and horror at the scene before them. A nursing supervisor standing over a pregnant woman who was writhing on the floor in agony. The color drained from Jessica's face as she realized who had witnessed her assault, understanding instantly that her career, her freedom, and her entire future had just evaporated in the space of those few seconds. "Director Williamson," she stammered, backing away from me like a criminal caught in the act, her supervisor's badge now looking like evidence of authority abused rather than earned through competence and caring. "I can explain this. It's not what it looks like. She attacked me first, and I was just defending myself from this crazy woman." "Explain this," Uncle Richard said, his voice cold enough to freeze blood as he crossed the room in 3 swift strides, his medical training taking over as he knelt beside me with gentle but urgent hands, checking my pulse and scanning for injuries. "Someone call 911 immediately," he commanded the nurses, his authority absolute and unquestionable in this moment of crisis. "And I want security here now to detain both of these people until the police arrive." His hands were professional but tender as he examined me, his eyes never leaving my face as he assessed my condition with decades of medical experience. "Uncle Richard," I gasped, trying to sit up despite the pain radiating through my body like waves of fire. "The baby? Please tell me the baby is okay." "Don't move, sweetheart." His voice was calm and reassuring despite the storm brewing in his eyes as he looked up at Ryan and Jessica with barely controlled rage. "Just breathe slowly, and help is coming. You're going to be fine, both of you." But even as he spoke those comforting words, I could see the worry in his expression, the professional concern of a doctor who understood that premature labor at 32 weeks carried serious risks. Ryan finally seemed to comprehend the gravity of what had just happened, the criminal nature of Jessica's assault and his own complicity in allowing it to occur. "Madison, I'm sorry. I never thought she would actually hurt you physically. I just wanted to end our marriage, not put you in danger." His words felt like too little too late, an attempt to minimize his responsibility for orchestrating the circumstances. That led to this violence. "Shut up," Uncle Richard said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent his entire career making life and death decisions. "Don't say another word, either of you, until your lawyers arrive." As sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second, I felt something wet between my legs and realized with growing terror that my water had broken. The baby was coming, 8 weeks too early, and the contractions beginning. To tear through my body felt like my daughter's desperate attempt to escape the violence that had shattered our peaceful world. "The baby's coming," I whispered, fear replacing rage as the reality of premature labor set in. "Uncle Richard, it's too early. She's too small. What if something's wrong with her because of what they did?" Uncle Richard squeezed my hand with the gentle strength that had comforted me through countless childhood-scraped knees and adolescent heartbreaks. His presence an anchor of safety in this storm of violence and betrayal. "We're going to take care of both of you, Madison. You and Emma are going to be just fine." But even as he spoke those words with medical authority and family love, I could see the concern in his eyes, the understanding that premature birth carried risks that would haunt us for months to come. As paramedics burst through the door and began working on me with professional efficiency, I watched Ryan standing frozen against the wall, while Jessica cowered in the corner, both of them finally understanding the consequences of their actions. In that moment, as medical professionals fought to save my life and my daughter's, I made a silent promise to Emma and to myself. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. They had tried to destroy us before we'd even had a chance to fight back, but they had no idea who they were dealing with now. The woman they'd attacked was gone, replaced by someone infinitely stronger, someone who would stop at nothing to protect her daughter and seek justice for what they'd done. The nightmare was ending, but their reckoning was just beginning. Years later, as I stood in my psychology practice helping other women find their strength after betrayal, I realized that Ryan and Jessica had given me something they never intended. Absolute certainty that I was capable of surviving anything. They tried to destroy me and instead made me unbreakable.